On July 18th, Mercury went retrograde at 15 degrees Leo, and on July 24th, we are going to have a new moon in Leo at 2 degrees. Now, today, I would like to make a follow-up to my other Mercury retrograde in Leo videos, but honestly, I really do want to focus on the new moon in Leo, even though this really isn't technically my new moon in Leo video, so stay tuned for that over the next 4 days-ish. But today I was inspired to make some further commentary on the Mercury retrograde in Leo, but honestly, like I just said, the new moon in Leo is actually really, really important, involving a birthing moment. As we all know, new moons are birthings, and this is a very powerful birthing moment in regards to whatever the Mercury retrograde story will be for you in your life and in the collective consciousness and whatever's going on in the world. As we all know, the world is, doing what it's doing, right? But we are in the crosshairs of some incredible Leo energy, and not only is this Mercury retrograde aspecting a bunch of stuff in the sky, so is this new moon in Leo. And if anything, the new moon in Leo is aspecting a lot of really, really powerful placements, okay? It's literally sextiling Uranus and Gemini. It's trining retrograde Saturn and retrograde Neptune in Aries. And that is really, really powerful stuff, guys. So we need to talk a little bit more about this. I want to really zero in on what this can mean from sort of an evolutionary perspective. Not that I'm totally like an evolutionary astrologer. If anything, I feel I'm more of a traditional astrologer, but as a spiritual man, as many of you know, I think the soul evolutionary part of astrology and just life itself is kind of like what's going on here. I think we all are evolving as souls in this dream in God's mind, if you will. So this video, I want to kind of go over some talking points and kind of revisit maybe a couple of things involving what this Mercury retrograde is going to be all about, without repeating myself 1,000 times like I've talked about in other videos, but also what this new moon can represent involving what this retrograde is asking of us, because I do feel this is kind of a karmic moment for us to be examining how are we showing up in the world and how are we using our voice, Mercury communication. Are we expressing ourselves in the way that we want to, or are we kind of going to be back at the drawing board involving some of those questions? I think when we talk about Leo energy, we are talking about authenticity, self-expression, being courageous, selfhood, the identity. Okay. So yeah, Aries kind of has a similar flavor to Leo. And again, I'm not comparing them at all. They're obviously very two different zodiac signs, but again, they're kind of the same in regards to this focus on the self and the identity and wanting to show up in the world and to do something. And I think that's really what the fire element is really all about, honestly. So between Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, there is this initiative kind of seeking and doing in the world in a really physical kind of way, in a passionate kind of way. So Leo, like I said to you guys in one of my recent videos, this is energy we really haven't seen in a while. We had a full moon in Leo over the winter. We had a massive Mercury retrograde last August as well. And I think there might have been one other thing that happened in Leo. Oh, the Mars retrograde, of course. The Mars retrograde started off in the early degrees of Leo, went back into Cancer, right? Over the winter, remember that? Please drop some stories about anything you want to drop involving that if you'd like to, especially the Leo part of your life. But again, we really just had a retrograde moment for 6 degrees in December. And then once January 6th came around, Mars went back into Cancer. But all through the spring, we had Mars cruising through Leo. So that's actually really powerful to talk about, to be honest with you, of course. So ask yourself some of those questions, actually. What was going on in the Leo part of your life while Mars was going retrograde a little bit and then direct all spring? Because I think Mercury will be asking some questions there as well, bringing things up into your consciousness and asking you to face some things. Because like I've been telling you guys all of 2025, this is just the beginning of a lot of identity shifts that are happening at the core of our being. And our roles in the world, literally our roles in the world, are being questioned, and we are being tasked to change if we need to or if we want to. Some of us may not want to change. Some of us may just be elevating what we already are doing. But I would argue that literally all of us are kind of going through some kind of a consciousness shift, which is already asking us very difficult questions that involve the future us, if you will. And if we look at the world stage, I mean, just look at what's going on in the world too. Everybody is waiting on the edge of their seats to see what is the new future going to look like. I mean, we have conflicts and stuff going around the world that can literally shape the trajectory of the world like in an instant. So there's a lot going on, and I think everyone is trying to find their place in the world. Every country is trying to find their landing strip for the plane to land, in a way, because there's so many question marks, involving certain conflicts. I mean, I don't want to bring up certain wars, but there's a lot of potentials that can go down within some of these conflicts that can really shape how countries operate, and I think when we talk about some of the transits happening, especially this Mercury retrograde, that Mars retrograde over the winter, Mercury retrograde now coming back into Leo, we're going to have another Mercury retrograde next year as well, I believe, in Leo once again. And then also the nodes shift signs next summer. Okay. So I think by the next either Mercury retrograde next summer, or maybe the new moon in Leo again, or something like that. I don't have my timelines right. Maybe I'll put something up on the screen. But when the nodes change signs, the south node will enter Leo, and that's going to be massive for eclipses that start to happen in the summer. Okay. And that's going to, again, kind of put a flashlight over the Leo part of our life. And some of the stuff that we are going through in Leo right now may be amplified or just expressed in a more powerful way when next summer comes around. So, I mean, a good astrologer friend of mine mentioned that in a recent video of his, S.J. Anderson. I don't know if you're watching, my friend, colleague, but you did mention in a recent video, and I found that to be really, really fascinating, that when we talk about looking even ahead to next summer, we are looking at new eclipses happening in Leo. So from the Mars retrograde that happened over the winter to now having another Mercury retrograde, along with this powerful new moon in Leo that is aspecting all of these outer planets, it's literally aspecting all the outer planets. The new moon in Leo will be going opposite Pluto in Aquarius at 2 degrees. The new moon in Leo will be sextiling Uranus in Gemini, and the new moon in Leo will be trining Saturn and Neptune retrograde in Aries. So ask yourself again, what is going on in that Aquarius part of your life? What is going on in Aries for you? What is going on in Gemini? And all these outer planets have just started these massive journeys in these zodiac signs, in these themes of life for you. So today I want to maybe try to make this video a little bit shorter as I cruise through some talking points, but I really want you to ask yourself deeper questions about the Leo part of your life. Because again, new moons are all about birthings. Okay. Full moons are the culmination of a lunar cycle. They're about revealings. They're about illuminating something there. But new moons are about initiations. I would not be surprised on the world stage if something pops off, if we get sudden bursts of information that ignite a new fire, if you will. So new moons are a totally different flavor than a full moon. We are supposed to be putting intentions out there, planting seeds. We can see the beginnings of something. Okay. That's really, think about that energy, the beginning of something here. So this new moon, I think, is going to light the fire of a lot of what the outer planets could represent in a really powerful way at the start of these outer planet transits. Really, when we're discussing Saturn and Neptune in retrograde, I would say more dominantly than Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius is kind of the anchor of this new world order shift. Pluto in Aquarius is kind of the death and rebirth shamanic moment in all of our lives. I think the Aquarius part of our life is kind of anchoring in, like the deepest of changes, if you ask me, where Saturn and Neptune and also Uranus and Gemini now, they're kind of feeding Pluto just a lot of other information that's going to kind of be unearthing and providing the deeper transformations and the catalysts for the Pluto and Aquarius stories for ourselves. So honestly, I would argue that that's probably the most strong out of everything that's going on in the sky right now. It's Pluto and Aquarius, hands down, in my opinion. So when it comes to the grand scheme of or the grand themes of like what is really uprooting and changing us at the deepest of levels, it is the Aquarius part of our lives. Now, before I continue, guys, and get into some talking points, I would just like to say, if you're enjoying this video and you would like to support the channel and support my work, just consider subscribing, hitting that like button and leaving a comment. Share with me anything you would like. I would love to read your comments. I read all of your comments. I would like to really, respond back to some of them if I can. I always try to acknowledge all of you guys and heart them. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on all this. And if you'd like to connect with me, my August and September books are now open. I would love to connect with you and do a reading for you. And we can connect and talk about whatever you want. I also have a new offering that's a little bit cheaper than my signature offering, for 60 minutes versus 90 minutes. So if you'd like to connect with me for 60 minutes versus 90, then just go to my website, links down below. All right, my friends. Now, without repeating myself from all the other videos I've made on Mercury retrograde, I would like to offer some talking points that maybe I have not touched on in my other videos. And of course, to continue talking a little bit about this new moon, even though I will be making a full-on new moon video within the next couple of days. But I want you to ask yourself, is my self-expression authentic or performative? Okay. We need to understand some of the things we went through in recent months in the Leo parts of our lives. And I think when we look to, yes, of course, Aquarius, Aries, and now Gemini, we are all trying to feel a little more deeper, I think, into the truth of who we are and how we're going to start expressing ourselves in a really, hopefully powerful way, from a place of empowerment. And this retrograde, I think, might challenge that a little bit for us to review. Are we expressing ourselves the way we want to? Are we really embodying the version of self that we want to embody? I mean, we have gone through a lot of restructuring and reshaping and rethinking over the last couple of months, especially during that Mars retrograde, like I told you. And then when Mars was going direct all spring, I mean, we had a lot of energy kind of getting pumped into the Leo part of our life. And I think whatever those stories were, we have to now ask ourselves in this Mercury retrograde moment, right before this new moon, which I think will provide enlightenment around what the Mercury retrograde will be giving us. Okay. So I think Mercury retrogrades are actually really beautiful sometimes because they do provide us great insight into something we need to change, something we need to course correct on, guys. And I mean, and that's a good feeling when we finally figure out like what we need to do or what we need to restructure here. So I think we're dealing with expression. We're dealing with, in this particular case, recognition and external sources rather than inner purpose. Like, are you acting from a place where you're looking for validation, or are you really acting from a place that's authentic and true to who you are? Okay. Because the second decan of Leo, where this Mercury retrograde will begin, is really about the recognition aspect of Leo. It's really the heart of being seen, if you ask me. And I think during the beginning days of the Mercury retrograde, we are being faced with some of those questions like, are we acting? Is there any aspect of us that needs an ego check? You know what I'm saying? And is there anything we need to reintegrate or rethink to get back into the heart space? I think Leo, very much a heart-centered zodiac sign. Okay. And we need to get more heartfelt in some ways on how we're showing up in our life and how we have been, or how we have been shaping our identities. And as we look ahead into maybe the people we would like to become, are we being led from the heart? Are we truly acting from the heart? And I think when it comes to some of these aspects going to the other planets in the sky, we have to examine what those really mean as well, especially like, again, coming back to Saturn and Neptune. Where are you overly identifying with yourself? Are you rigid? Are you overly identifying with some part of yourself that's a little bit too strict? Like, what do you really have to restructure that needs to be kind of front and center and dealt with in a more heartfelt way? Like, are you being too rigid? That's kind of what I'm trying to say. Are you being too rigid in your process, or are you actually operating from the heart space? And then with Neptune there, asking yourself, what illusions about my mission and purpose right now need to still be worked out? Like, is there any illusion of myself that needs to be dissolved still? Okay. And how can you really replace the illusions and the confusion of who you are, what you think you've been molding yourself into? Like, how can you add more of your authentic inner self into this? Because I think maybe some of us have lost ourselves in the last couple of weeks, maybe the last month or so, when it comes to that Leo part of your life. Maybe even the Pluto and Aquarius stuff going on, maybe even some of the Aries stuff, because we're very new. We're getting really acquainted to this new energy. I mean, so we have to kind of get clear on some of these things that we're going through, because I think our identity is at stake here, and like how we're going to show up in the versions, as the versions of ourselves that we need to. Like, how are we actually going to show up in life from this point forward? So I think when it comes to the Mercury retrograde here, and when it comes to like the new moon in Leo, we are going to be faced with these enlightenment moments where we have an opportunity to really shift some of these things. We have an opportunity to change course and like get more heart-centered. Okay. And that's something that's really, really important, I think, from an evolutionary perspective in our own life story. Now, in the world, this is going to look totally different, because I think the world is going through so many different identity shifts. So many different nations are at each other's throats. So many wars are happening and potentially could get worse. So everybody is fighting for some version of authentic self, if you really examine that. And I think this new moon in Leo is going to pop off kind of a very powerful moment of clarity in a lot of dimensions of life. And in our own life, I think this will be very beneficial for a lot of the things that we are trying to structure and mold for ourselves, as far as like identity is concerned. And I'm going to keep using that word identity, because Aries is so heavily going to be affected by this new moon. Aries is going to be very affected by the trines that will eventually hit the early degrees of Aries from that Mercury retrograde as it gets deeper back into the early degrees of Leo. And I think when it comes to the Mercury energy mixed with this Aries energy, mixed with this new moon birthing moment, along with the aspects going to Pluto and Aquarius, which again is this kind of foundation of the transformations in our lives and in the world, like all of these moving parts and pieces are coming together to really restructure, reassess, to form something new. So honestly, I think by the end of the summer, once Mercury gets out of post shadow, August 25th, I think we're going to be living in a whole new world. Honestly, I think we're going to know so much more about certain conflicts around the world, including Russia, and what's going on with that, because now America's really getting itself involved in what's going on there. And now we're going to see how, like, for example, Trump handles this, in a for real way. And like, then we're going to really take a hard look at where we've come from. You know what I mean? So this is actually a really powerful moment, guys. Now, some guidance tips and some questions I want you to ask yourself is, where Where is your voice? What is your true self? What is your true voice? What do you need to accomplish still? What are you trying to accomplish? What version of yourself wants to accomplish what? Okay. Are you being authentic? Are you showing up and acting from the heart? Are you acting from a place of ego? Okay. And let's look at what the tarot card associations are. We have the Six of Wands with the second decan of Leo. We have the Two of Wands when it comes to the first decan of Aries. We have the Five of Swords when it comes to the first decan of Aquarius, where Pluto is. And we have the Eight of Swords when it comes to the first decan of Gemini, where Uranus is. So we are dealing with a lot of energy that really is sparking new beginnings with that Two of Wands, okay, in Aries. We are very much at the beginning of a new world for ourselves and for the world at large. We are looking at mental breakthroughs when it comes to the first decan of Gemini, which is ruled by the Eight of Swords. So we all are looking for some self-liberation on a mental level. And then, when we look at the Six of Wands in the second decan, and then Mars will retrograde back into the first decan, which is the Five of Wands. That Five of Wands going opposite the Five of Swords in Aquarius, okay, because that's the tarot card associated with the first decan of Aquarius. This is where the conflict is. This is where the battling is. This is where the tension is. This is where we are trying to get clear on what is this new path? What is this new world we're going to live in? What do we need to do to change something? What do we need to do to change the world? What do we need to do to change ourselves? Okay. And what is this Mercury in Leo moment, this retrograde, showing you, asking you to review, to restructure, to rebuild? How are you talking to yourself? Is there a new way you are supposed to be emerging in the world? In the sense of communication, okay? And when it comes to the new moon, what do you see? What do you need to birth? What do you see as far as looking ahead into your future? What version of self can you see and sense? Because maybe that also will affect the Neptune and Aries stuff and the Saturn stuff going on there, because Neptune is trying to dream some new version of yourself into being. Neptune is trying to vision a new path for you, okay? And I think the Two of Wands, when we look at that, what new path is calling you, right? What fear of the unknown is holding you back? Because the Two of Wands is also about the unknown, okay? We don't know what's coming in the future. We don't know, but we do know that we're at the beginning of a story, and we have to have vision for that new story. And that is where Neptune is, that is where Saturn is, and we're going to have a massive 0-degree Saturn-Neptune conjunction in February once we handle some of this retrograde energy now. So some of this retrograde energy that we're facing now, really sink into that in the Aries part of your life, because we are definitely back at the drawing board. We are definitely in a moment where I think, again, this Leo stuff is asking us to reclaim our authentic self, our authentic voice, if I could speak. The passion of Leo is just taking over me. So yeah, my friends, I really think that that's all I need to say today on all of this. And I'm going to talk about the new moon in Leo once again in a couple of days from now. But, when it comes to the Aquarius stuff, just to close one last time, Pluto in Aquarius, this deep transformation through power dynamics, okay, and dealing with the opposition to Leo, we're absolutely talking about power dynamics, okay? We're talking about how things are really structured, honestly. Saturn rules Aquarius in ancient astrology, Uranus in modern astrology, of course, but so we're dealing with a lot of new, deep transformational change that none of us are really used to yet. And we have to get real with ourselves, and ask ourselves, like, how can we be more authentic versus ego-driven, because that Leo stuff is really going to want to pump the ego, and maybe a lot of us kind of have been feeding that ego stuff and not being as honest as we need to be. But I think the honesty is what's going to pave the path forward in our life, that's going to really show us really who we are. And that heart is so important. Acting from that heart space, getting clear with your feelings and what you really feel passionate and called to do, that's where the medicine is, my friends. That's where the Leo medicine is. So that all being said, that's all for this one, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you took something away from this, and I will see you in the next video.